Welcome, curious learners. Today, we are undertaking a truly monumental deep dive. Our sources are less like a stack of related articles and more like a fully formed spiritual and political manifesto. It's a really complex blend, radical personal critiques, esoteric doctrine analysis, even blueprints for political change.
That's exactly right. And I think to really get the core message here, you have to recognize the highly dualistic worldview underpinning absolutely everything.
Dualistic how?
These sources basically claim that our world is an intense, active battleground, not just, metaphorically, but right down to our thoughts, our relationships, even what we physically hear.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're trying to extract the essential knowledge from, nearly 20 interconnected themes here. And it all starts with this really urgent framing of a spiritual conflict needing immediate active engagement. It's even prefaced by a quick reference to a Buddhist prayer for humanity's salvation, sort of setting the stage.
Okay, so our mission is distillation, essentially. We need to quickly synthesize these wildly diverse topics, moving from, personal spiritual hygiene all the way to radical German political theory. Let's unpack that initial battlefield first. Relationships.
Right. We begin with this concept called a hidden battle for love. And the premise here is that isolation, failing relationships. These aren't just accidental or sociological issues.
Not just bad luck or incompatibility?
Not according to this view, no. Dark forces actively seek to sabotage healthy connections. The idea is that loving, intact relationships are, the crucial foundation for spiritual stability and resistance against negativity.
It's fascinating how specific the operational tactics are described. The sources highlight that the most potent weapon used against what they call good souls is causing debilitating fatigue.
Sleep deprivation.
Exactly. It's listed right there as their strongest attack method.
Huh. Why fatigue specifically? Well, the thinking is, when the targets are tired, irritable, they're spiritually vulnerable, the sources actually detail how these forces then manipulate communication, making partners mishear or misunderstand crucial words in a disagreement.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, escalating things, maybe by manipulating stress hormones, or even planting tainted memories associated with the conflict.
And they don't stop there, apparently.
Yeah.
They also attack attractiveness.
Influencing individuals towards poor eating habits, maybe causing weight gain or bloating or just general self-care neglect, anything that makes a person appear, unreliable or less attractive to their partner.
The goal being to break the bond by chipping away at self-respect and mutual appeal.
Precisely. And this level of tactical detail, it extends right into the auditory realm, which brings us to the section titled, Is She Concealing the Danger?
Okay.
This warning deals with non-physical ear sounds, think spiritual tinnitus, which, according to the source, actually transports specific kinds of energy.
It's astonishing how micro-specific this gets. Like spiritual warfare dictated by which ear you hear a sound in.
Exactly that. Listening to sounds perceived from the left side is flagged as very dangerous. It supposedly transfers negative energy that can actively supply negative entities or even cause physical inflammation.
And the right side?
Sounds from the right side are positive. They should be embraced. It suggests this direct energy pipeline into your spiritual core, all based on auditory perception.
Okay, so if the attack is constant and incredibly specific like that, how do you defend yourself?
The answer provided is something called diamond armor.
Diamond armor.
Yeah, it's the spiritual protection shield, basically, and it's built primarily through purity and ethical living.
What does purity mean in this context?
The sources are very clear. It requires total abstinence from alcohol, drugs, meat, and eggs. This disciplined lifestyle is presented as the direct countermeasure to the negative forces trying to infiltrate your body and mind.
Okay, so from the sort of intimate battlefield of the home and the body, we then move to the ideological battlefield, looking at spiritual traditions. And there's a really sharp internal critique aimed at Saint Matt.
Yes, the esoteric path focused on inner sound and light. The critique is pretty devastating. It's titled, A Message to Saint Matt Disciples.
And what's the core issue raised?
Well, what's fascinating is the implication drawn from what's presented as institutional failure. The author asks why, after nearly 50 years and millions of initiates. Millions. Why not a single student has achieved even the first level of spiritual progress? And this claimed failure is then used as justification by the master to assert a monopoly of truth.
So if the students are all incompetent,
then only the master's word holds value. It centralizes all the spiritual power right there.
And speaking of power and doctrine, there's a point about a radical ideological shift after a leadership change. In the word of the master.
Exactly. The former master apparently held to a very dualistic cosmology. He distinguished clearly between the positive God force and the subordinate negative deities Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, associated with the lower worlds.
Okay, a clear hierarchy.
Right. But the successor, it says, radically changed that doctrine. He exalted those same deities, treating them as almost equal to the highest God.
Which completely undermines the original premise, right? If those figures were part of the negative structure trapping souls.
Precisely. It fundamentally shifts the entire spiritual architecture of that path, according to this critique.
Okay, next we encounter the Grail message. What defines this path?
It's distinct. The sources say it's Christ-centric, it embraces reincarnation and karma, but interestingly, it rejects specific spiritual exercises, and it vehemently condemns hypnotism, calls it a spiritual crime that binds the spirit.
A spiritual crime. Strong words.
Very. And this is where it gets really serious. The initiation process, it's called the sealing.
The sealing, what does that involve?
It apparently connects the individual to something called a Führerkette, a chain of guidance, and also to a protective cross. But the commitment is extremely high stakes.
High stakes how? This sounds intense.
Well, that specific consequence mechanism described is maybe the most stark warning in all these sources. If you fail to maintain that spiritual commitment within a set time,
you just lose the blessing.
No, it's worse than that. The protective cross actually turns into an instrument of the negative force.
Wow.
Leading, it says, to the worst consequences and a state of hell on earth from which, and the source is explicit, there is no solution.
So it's presented less as a path and more like a high-risk spiritual contract where failure is just catastrophic.
Absolutely. Catastrophic and final.
Okay, let's contrast that with Directive G88. This one is framed differently, isn't it? Like a fictional briefing.
Yeah, supposedly from the headquarters of the negative power. It's like a fictional intelligence document outlining a plan to sabotage anthroposophy, Rudolf Steiner's movement.
Why target anthroposophy?
The stated goal in this directive is to prevent its renewal, because its inherent flexibility is seen as a massive threat by this negative power.
So what are the tactics described?
Really specific. Promote only a revival of old, outdated teachings, not genuine renewal. Use infiltration. They specify 3 agents for every 10 members.
3 and 10, that's a lot.
It is. And establish Steiner's teachings as untouchable dogma to basically ensure what they call system stagnation. They want it to become rigid, irrelevant, and unable to adapt.
Fascinating. Okay, shifting gears slightly to cultural commentary. We have Lyrics, Tribe, and Family. What do these reveal?
They show that aggressive, dualistic nature, again, in published music or poetry. On one hand, you get these spiritual warfare themes like break the chains, standing up against unseen spirits, pushing you towards bad deeds.
Right.
But on the other hand, you get really severe condemnation and judgment, particularly in a piece called Earn to Sight Harvest Time, which promises final punishment for stupid slaves. It sets up a very clear us versus them, enlightened versus condemned kind of vibe.
Then there's that really provocative piece, I Hate Men. How does that fit in?
It adopts the internal monologue of a woman who's rejecting a potentially loving but currently struggling male partner. He's described with really cruel specificity a loser who stinks and is fat.
Ouch. What's the message there?
Well, the reflection seems to be that she rejects him not because he's inherently bad, but because he fails to meet her very high financial and appearance standards. So she misses out on the potential dream prince he could have become. It's using sharp societal critique, the focus on superficial stuff, to say something about failing to see or nurture true spiritual potential in love.
That intense focus on the dark side, the negative, seems to connect back to the Essential Clarifications and Personal Notes section.
It does. Here we learn about the author's belief that the negative force actively withholds knowledge of past karma and accounts.
Withholds knowledge? Why?
To keep souls trapped here on Earth. To prevent some kind of mass spiritual exodus by keeping people ignorant of their spiritual debts or contracts.
But then there's a twist, isn't there? About the master.
Yes, surprisingly, the source notes that the master actually defends the negative force's actions in this regard. Claims that denying humans this knowledge is somehow essential to the way of life.
So the negative force, even in its oppression, serves a necessary function in the spiritual order.
That seems to be the implication, a very complex, almost unsettling justification.
Okay, before we jump fully into the political side, let's touch on this figure, Aaron Berry, mentioned in Edwards' review. What's his story?
Right, so this section reviews the experiences of Ammon Berry. He's described as a former wealthy businessman whose life took a dramatic turn after being shot, led to a 7-year dark night of the soul.
And his approach is unconventional.
Highly controversial, yeah. He champions psychedelics, specifically mushrooms and DMT, calling them portals.
Portals.
His argument is that these substances offer experiences that might otherwise take, say, 30 or 50 years of traditional meditation to achieve. He sees them as a way to quickly access higher consciousness states, accelerate spiritual growth.
Which directly contradicts the total abstinence rules we heard about earlier in paths like Diamond Armor or The Power of Yahweh.
Massively contradicts them, yes. A huge point of divergence there.
Okay, so let's pivot now to the theological and political solutions offered, starting with The Power of Yahweh.
This path emphasizes love and purity, similar themes we've seen, but crucially, it stresses an active partnership with a God who is definitely not retired.
An active partnership.
Yes. The defining statement quoted is, "And the more we serve him, the more he can also act through us." So service becomes the direct channel for divine intervention in the world.
And the purity aspect.
Same requirements as the Diamond Armor path. Total abstinence from meat, eggs, alcohol, and drugs is essential for this partnership.
This focus on divine service then leads directly into some really radical political proposals in Be the New Germany.
It does. This section lays out a blueprint for an entirely new German government structure. It replaces the traditional separation of powers with what they call the 4 pillars of power: people, council, board, and guardian.
4 pillars. But what's truly radical about it?
I'd say it's the accountability mechanism. They propose the consent option. Imagine every politician being subject to a permanent, real-time approval rating from the populace.
Real-time? How would that even work?
Potentially managed through some kind of state application, it seems. And if a politician's approval rating drops below a certain threshold,
they're out.
Immediately removed, and snap elections are called. It basically introduces potential real-time democratic instability right into the core of government function.
Wow. And the ideological core driving this.
Oh, it's intense. It requires an official confession of faith from all leaders. Theology becomes state policy.
Including specific doctrines.
Yes, including protecting the natural order of man and woman and emphasizing something called holistic education. This includes mandatory meditation and prayer in schools.
Mandatory prayer in schools. And what's the rationale for that focus in education?
Education, in this vision, is explicitly framed as preparation for a future where many human skills are replaced by AI. So, spiritual discipline becomes the most necessary survival skill for the general population.
So the political vision is completely comprehensive, weaving spiritual discipline into every aspect of life, from diet and what you hear right up to the leader's faith and performance metrics.
Exactly. It's all interconnected in this worldview.
So, after all that, what does this all mean? We've gone from, spiritual sabotage in your own home, terrifying stakes and esoteric initiations, all the way to a blueprint for a nation governed by a specific spiritual creed, and even arguments for salvation through psychedelics. The common thread seems to be this intense conviction that there's a pervasive, intelligent spiritual war happening right now, and you can't just sit on the sidelines. Neutrality isn't an option.
And that, I think, raises a really important question for anyone trying to learn from this. When you're faced with such a vast, often contradictory array of information, one path warns failure means eternal hell on earth. Another claims rapid salvation through chemical portals. A third offers political systems based on mandatory theological dogma.
Yeah.
How do you, the informed learner, figure out which voice is genuinely guiding you toward knowledge, and which might just be another carefully constructed part of the spiritual camouflage, as it were?
That is definitely something to mull over.
Indeed.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Go explore.